Okay, it's always nice to have a full house. This meeting of the district is now called to order. We start off with an opportunity for general public comment as anyone has signed in. Okay, thank you. So we are immediately going to go into a public hearing. This is regarding the preliminary Shelton Metropolitan Park District budget, and it will be presented by our Finance Director, Nola von Nudeg.
Thank you. The preliminary SMPD budget has been presented to the Commission at a prior meeting, and the budget document has been filed with the City Clerk. The preliminary budget at this stage includes a full 75 cents per $1,000 of assessed value. So when you look at the tax revenue on that, you'll see that it's budgeted at that. But we understand that because of pro-rationing, the actual tax levy collection will likely be less than that. But we levy for what we can reasonably legally ask for. So that's why when you look at that budget, you'll see the revenue, tax revenue is higher than what you've seen in the past. So just understand when you look at it, that's why you see that difference there. Really, the main purpose of tonight's meeting is just to answer any questions that you commissioners may have about this budget and to receive any public input on the budget. So at that point, I would just stop and ask if you have any questions.
Okay, do either of you have any questions?
Well, the revenue is going to go up slightly for that, isn't it, because of our property taxes?
Right.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. That's exciting.
None for me, thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. And is there anyone in the public want to speak on this? No? Do we vote on this at this time?
We also have a resolution for you.
Okay, could we have the reading of the resolution?
Well, we don't need to read the resolution yet. I have it for you in your packets there.
So that's part of the motion?
Well, the resolution will be presented at your November 20th meeting.
Oh, okay.
So you don't have to have a first and second reading. The resolution authorizes the 1% increase in the property tax levy amount from the previous year, and it's exclusive of additional revenue resulting from new construction, improvements to property, et cetera, and any increase in the value of state assessed property, any annexations, and any refunds or other adjustments that are made. The property values in the city did increase about 8%, but we're limited to a 1% increase in the property taxes for existing properties for the purposes of this resolution. So the resolution is resolution number 21-1117, and this resolution, along with the levy certification, will need to be filed by with the county by the end of November. So we're requesting that the Commission place the resolution number 21-1117 on the action agenda for adoption on November 20th, and also to place the levy certification on the action agenda for the November 20th, 2017 meeting.
Okay. Sorry, doing this once a year, I don't quite
That's okay.
keep up.
That's all right.
Okay, so staff is requesting this be placed on the action agenda. Does the other members of the board concur with this action?
I
Yes.
concur.
Yes.
Okay. So we are adjourned out of the public hearing and back into regular session. There's no consent agenda, and there's no business agenda. There's no action agenda. Are there any administration reports? No, I'm not seeing any. So the next Shelton Metropolitan Park District special meeting will be Monday, November 20th, 2017 at 6 p.m., and this meeting is adjourned.
At this time, I would like to open up our regularly scheduled City of Shelton Commission meeting. Would you please stand with me and recite the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. First item on our agenda is that we are going to have a proclamation read to us, and this is concerning one of our dearest citizens, Nita, of Nita's Cafe, of which we all have gone to since we were little tiny children. And she is, this week, I believe, turning 100 years old. So we're going to have a proclamation read in honor of her 100-year birthday.
All right, so we have the proclamation of Anita Barrickman Day, November 10th, 2017. Whereas Anita Barrickman began her restaurant career as a dishwasher at age 35 at Cabin Inn, the Fur Restaurant in Shelton in 1952. And whereas Nita bought a restaurant and moved it to its current location at 325 West Railroad Avenue in 1962. And whereas Nita spent thousands of mornings arriving early to bake her famous pies and make her delicious soups for the local customers. And whereas Nita's Cafe was always a warm and inviting place where no one was a stranger and everyone was a friend. And whereas Nita is a lifetime Shelton and Mason County resident who is beloved by many people near and far. And whereas Nita turns 100 years old on Friday, November 10th, 2017, and a gala birthday party will be held in her honor starting at noon on Saturday, November 11th at Nita's Coffee Shop in downtown Shelton. Now therefore, the Shelton City Commission declares Friday, November 10th, 2017 as Nita Barrickman Day in the city of Shelton and encourages local residents to honor her by having a piece of pie and with their coffee.
Thank you very much for reading that. This is a copy of that proclamation there. It's right there, and we will be honored to give that to her. I'm planning to give that to her on Saturday at 12 o'clock. So thank you very much. Next on the agenda will be, well, first I'd like to say something here, and this is from our legal staff here today, that on this meeting, because this is policy, we are in a public forum here for the city of Shelton, and we are in a public building. And so all of our comments tonight, even comments from the public, cannot have any comments about this coming election. So just so everybody knows beforehand, this is from legal staff, no comments about our current election that we are going through. So now we have our weekly commission reports. Commissioner Moore?
Yes, I have a Mason Transit Authority budget workshop this week, as well as a Transit Community Center meeting with Mason Transit to determine the makeup of the board, which agencies should have representation on the board, and that's something that we do every 4 years. So I have that meeting coming up this week. There's also a Public Works Committee meeting, and then I definitely will be celebrating Nita Barrickman Day. So that's it for this week.
Thank you very much. Commissioner McDowell?
Kind of a quiet week. I have my left board meeting tomorrow morning, bright and early, 8 a.m. And I will be celebrating with Nita on Saturday, also for her birthday party at noon. That should be fun. That's my week.
Tomorrow I will be having a staff briefing. On Thursday, I will be attending my monthly Economic Development Council board meeting. On Saturday, I will also be at Nita's birthday party to give her her proclamation. So that completes our commission reports. Next is the general public comment. If anyone would have anything they'd like to say for the good of the order, you just need to sign in at the end of the table there, and we give a 3-minute comment period. So
We have Marilyn Vogler.
I wanted to speak for the agenda.
Okay, so. Jason Coots.
First of all, thank you for the opportunity to talk. I plan on talking about the election, I guess the rules and why there's that podium. I obviously want to speak about the recent findings due to my public records request and talk about the distrust amongst Shelton as far as towards the leadership of the city. I'm on Facebook, we're all on Facebook. I see the city making steps to move forward, and I see steps like this in a pattern backwards. I think that probably by now you're starting to feel this clock ticking. You're starting to feel people distancing themselves from you due to your pattern of disregard to public disclosure laws and open government rules. It's going to get worse. I think that the things that I further requested are going to show a pattern of behind-the-scenes conversations, and it's not just going to blow over. This personally started when you guys voted to silence the people that elected you. And now, from what I found in your emails, it almost suggests that $500 would have bought their right to vote if money talks. To me, any organization ends up with characteristics of its leadership. And I think a real leader has integrity. I know what I'm going to find when the records are released. You guys obviously know. Right now is your opportunity to be a leader and set the record straight, as opposed to just being caught. It's your opportunity to set the record straight, and for me, right now is as good a time as any.
Thank you.
That is all at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. At this point, we are going to recess out of our regular meeting, and we are going to open up a public hearing. I will turn the meeting over to our city manager at this time, Ryan Wheaton.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. We are going to present the 2018 budget in this public hearing. Thought we would start with this year's city manager budget message. A couple things to note. This year, we have had quite a bit of change at the staff level. We have hired around 40 people. Our leadership team is almost entirely brand new as of this time last year. I can say without doubt that the leadership team and the people that you have working for you at the city are by far the best staff that I've ever worked with. And I've worked for a lot of public agencies in a number of states, but this is a very strong group that you have. And the things that they've been able to do in looking at both last year's budget and making sure that they can live within the means of, for many of them, a budget they didn't put together has been remarkable. But also working together as a team as they look at budget items for both the amended 2017 budget and next year's budget has been impressive as well. The priorities that you set at our budget retreat a couple months ago, we'll talk about tonight when Nola gets into her component of the budget discussion, but just to remind everybody that the first priority was public safety, second is economic development, third, technology upgrades, and then fourth, the downtown vision plan and making sure that we are keeping up with improvements there. We expect to see further growth this year. We have a $65 million collective of projects that's coming forward from the school district, and we've gotten a glimpse of some of that as they come in to do some work before they actually submit their permit application. We also just received notice that a $35 million expansion at the hospital is going to go through next year. So that's another large project that we expect to see, in addition to all of the continued growth that we hope to see on the private development side. This year, one of the major developments that Nola and her finance staff were able to do was clear up the debt picture. So as we prepare for the beginning of 2018, we can let you and everybody else know that at the start of January, we will be just under $43.6 million in debt. Our total debt payments per month are just under $250,000, and in the budget message, you see the principal, interest, and total payments that we will make in 2018. Utilities, we're going to talk about all of them tonight, and one of the things that we want to note is that the decision you made in the summer to contract out the garbage service so far has been a positive step. We had news about a month ago that we shared with you about the recycling industry in China and the difficulties that West Coast recyclers are now having, and that conversation is much different as a client of a recycler versus if we would have taken that job on our own. We would have a very difficult time at this point. Moving forward to 2018, we're excited at the prospects of some new grant money that we're looking for. Obviously, we've had a public forum to talk about the Downtown Connector project. We haven't talked a lot about the Turner project just because it's pretty straightforward, but we're also excited we should hear back about those next Friday. But the potential that we started last year from a conversation that Commissioner McDowell had about the condition of Alder Street to potentially getting enough money to do that almost entirely grant funded is a very strong move for Craig and his public works staff really in the last 6 months as they've worked through that project. Moving forward, we also want to keep in mind that we continue to look at projects that we may not have money for, and we don't take the prospect of loan money lightly. So that's something that we mentioned last year and we'll mention again, that we're exhausting all possibilities before we bring anything to you to borrow money. But at this point, we don't have plans to do that, but we wanted to make sure that we're clear that we understand that message, and we'll continue down that path. That is the budget message for this year. Any questions I can answer?
No, it appears that the budget information that we got about 2 weeks ago, the 2018 proposed budget, I marked up that one. It appears the numbers all line up with the one that was just submitted this week. Is that correct?
Correct.
That is correct.
Okay.
I would just like to make one comment on your report, and I just would very happily like to underscore with the fact that there is no problem in the city's ability to make good on debt payments, and that we've never been in jeopardy of defaulting on any loan or bond. I think that the long history of financial stability is something that we can promote as a positive move for our community in attracting new businesses, new industries, new people to live here. So I'm really happy to see that highlighted in this report.
Yeah, from our perspective, when we sit down to talk about the budget, there are a few things that we don't really discuss, and I would say that debt payments, that topic is one of those issues because it's built in. It's not something that we have to scratch around to find that money. That's essentially a no-brainer for us. It's going to get paid.
Yeah, congratulations to all of us on that.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, what I'm trying to take a look here is see exactly if, looks like we have some, is this opportunity for some public testimony, I guess, at this time?
You can do that. I can give you
I've got it in my little cheat sheet. So actually, it looks like, Nola, did you have something to present here?
Just some follow-up information.
Let's do
along-
that first, and then we'll have public testimony.
Sure. When you look at the citywide budget, the preliminary budget at this stage is just over $47 million when you put all of the funds together. And the preliminary budget, as you mentioned, has been presented at a prior meeting, and it has also been submitted to the city clerk's office. And as Ryan Wheaton touched on, the budget, as we've been building it at the leadership staff level, is focusing on your 4 priorities that you identified for us in August: public safety, economic development, technology upgrades, and the downtown vision plan. At this stage, the preliminary City of Shelton 2018 budget includes all of the submitted budget requests, and the leadership team will be refining these budget numbers, and we will be bringing a final balanced budget for your review in 2 weeks at your November 20th regular meeting. Really, the main purpose for tonight's budget hearing is to answer any questions you may have about the budget and to receive any public input that the public would like to offer on the budget. So I would stop and ask if you have any questions at this stage on the budget before we get into the levy certification documents and hear from the public.
I had a question. this is the other original copy on page 5, and we're talking about our general fund.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and we go through the last year's budget, actually 2016, then we have 2017, and we actually have for the 2018 proposed budget, it appears that is almost $6 million more than last year.
That relates back to the fact that what you're seeing at this stage is a preliminary budget that includes all of the budget requests that have been submitted. What we will be doing at the leadership staff level will be paring that down so that we can bring you back a final balanced budget.
Okay? So we are working on that number.
That is correct. This is not a final document.
Any other questions or comments for Nola?
Not at this time.
Okay, you've done a beautiful job, Nola. Okay, at this time, if there's any public comment, and now would be the opportunity for someone to come and talk about this if they like, from what we just talked about. If there's no public testimony at this time, then what I'd like to do is close this public hearing and open a public hearing for the ad valorem hearing. And so, according to this, is Nola, you're up.
Okay. Ordinance number 1909-1117 and the draft 2018 levy certification documents should be there. And this ordinance authorizes a 1% increase in the property tax levy amount from the previous year. This is exclusive of additional revenue resulting from new construction, improvements to property, any increases in value of state assessed property, any annexations, and any refunds or other adjustments made. In plain English, that means that the purpose of the levy, of the ordinance, is to identify an increase in the amount of property taxes for existing property. So, new construction is on top of that. Administrative refund levies are on top of that. That's why when you look at the ordinance and the dollar amount in there, it looks odd. It's because it's just a calculation of the increase for existing properties. This ordinance, along with the levy certification, must be filed with the county by the end of November. And we are requesting at this time a first reading of ordinance number 1909-1117, increasing ad valorem taxes in the city of Shelton for calendar year 2018, and to place this ordinance on the action agenda for November 20th, 2017 for its second reading and adoption, and also to place the levy certification on the consent agenda for the November 20th, 2017 meeting.
Any questions or comments?
No.
Okay. So, at this time, if there's any public testimony concerning this specific item, now would be the opportunity. If no one has come forward to sign in, we can move forward. And what we can do is at this point close this public hearing and return to our regularly scheduled session.
Jamie was trying to get your attention.
Yes.
Do you want me to go ahead and read the ordinance into?
We need to do that. Should we do it before we close the hearing?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm going to take it back. There we go. So now we have not closed that.
If you can just open it officially again.
Yes, I want to open up the public hearing that I just accidentally closed. All right.
Thank you. Ordinance number 1909-1117, an ordinance of the City of Shelton, Washington, increasing ad valorem taxes in the City of Shelton for the calendar year of 2018.
Okay. Now, according to my fine print, I close it, and then we see if we concur to place this on the resolution, place it on the levy certification here. So I believe at this point we can close this. Okay. We're going to close the public hearing, return to our regular session, and at this time, do we concur with staff to place this resolution and the levy certification on the action agenda for November 20th, 2017?
Yes.
Yes.
We concur to do that. Thank you very much. Moving right along, we have a consent agenda. Have my fellow commissioners had an opportunity to read their consent agenda?
Yes.
Okay, so could we please have a reading of that consent agenda?
Vouchers numbered 15764 through 15765 in the amount of $65,000. Vouchers numbered 15777 through 15912 in the amount of $427,554.32.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move we approve the consent agenda as read.
I second it.
There's a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? The agenda passes. Item number 2, let's see here. Item number 1, we're now into the action agenda part of our meeting, and so item number 1 is going to be a presentation by our Financial Director, Nola Van Udeg.
This is a resolution to authorize investment of the City of Shelton monies into the local government investment pool. We actually have that already in place. This is really just an update of authorized signatories on that account. And that was, that resolution was previously presented, and we are requesting adoption of that resolution at this time. This will update the signatories from Kathy Byerly and Thomas Donnelly to City Manager Ryan Wheaton and myself as the Finance Director. This is for our local government investment pool account.
Okay, is there any public comment on this issue? Seeing none, do my fellow commissioners have anything more to add to this?
I just would like to say that I think this makes perfect sense and would cause a lot less confusion maybe, so.
It's a housekeeping detail.
I
Housekeeping.
appreciate the housekeeping, thank you.
All right, so I would entertain a motion at this time.
I move to accept resolution number 1109-1017, authorization of investment of City of Shelton monies in the local government investment pool.
I second that motion.
Okay, there's a motion and a second? Yes,
We
Jane.
do need to take public comment.
Didn't we, I just did that one, didn't I?
Did you?
I think so on action item, but thank you for
I just
keeping me
wanted
up.
to-
No. I think we asked if there was any public comment on this, if there is anybody. This would be the opportunity. Seeing none, we got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the motion passes. Item number 2. It's called the amended special meeting minutes, and this will be presented to us by our Assistant City Manager, Vicki Look.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. I presented the request to approve the amended minutes and the executive sessions. We had left out some detail earlier in the year, so we brought back six sets of minutes for you and asked that you take a look at those and maybe adopt those.
Okay?
Questions, I'll answer those for you.
I guess if there's anybody from the public who'd like to talk about this, this would be open for any public comment. Seeing none?
I'm sorry, I didn't see this. Yes, we have Jason Coots.
Okay. Yeah, this is your opportunity.
I guess on this one, I'm happy to see you go back and kind of clean things up. I hope you make a pattern of it. And I was hoping to see maybe in the amended special minutes that they could include the illegal communications on Facebook and otherwise.
Well, our city attorney is here, and so I don't know if this is the correct form. Did you catch that? I think he said something about Facebook. So what did you want? You want something added in there?
I think it would be appropriate for communications on Facebook, other public type interactions between the commissioners to be added to the special meeting amendment.
Well, I don't know. What do you think, Vicki Look?
Well, I think these minutes are from our public meetings, which are our regular meetings. And so we have regular meetings, and some of those meetings contain executive sessions, and we have the subject and then we plan within those meetings.
What's that called when commissioners talk to each other on Facebook?
Facebook.
Well, they're not supposed to have personal communications outside of the public meeting.
If they did with the meeting, with some sort of minutes you get?
No, I think that would be just
Is it just the scope of these meetings as they
Thank you.
call them?
special meetings.
They seem like special meetings.
Yeah,
Yep.
ones that we're not, perhaps, if it is true.
Okay, so, does anybody else have anything else to say about this?
No, more housekeeping for the minutes that will help us keep better records.
Absolutely. So, at this time, I would request a motion.
I move to approve the amended special meeting minutes and executive session details of December 1st, 2016, January 17th, 2016, February 17th, 2017, March 10th, 2017, May 1st, 2017, and July 31st, 2017.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
I second that.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion passes.
also.
Did you?
Forgot to say aye.
Oh, I got it on there. You didn't say nay, did you?
No.
Okay. Thank you very much, Vicki Look. Is there anything else you needed? Are you up for the next one?
She's up next.
Well, let me look and see. Okay. Yeah, you got two in a row, don't you? All right. Thank you.
Okay, well, the next one is the public defense grant that is on the action agenda tonight. And we did discuss this last week as well, and what that is they gave us a grant that covers a 2-year program in the amount of $50,000. And this helps the city pay for the public defender expenses that we have for our indigent clients that are coming to the court. So this is a grant that we've received before, but this is the first time it's been a grant that covers the 2 years for the amount covering $50,000. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer those for you.
Well, maybe we should go, if there's any questions from the public first. So kind of do
I
that.
have a quick question.
Are you signed up then for this? Is it?
Sure.
Okay.
Yep. I was just curious if the grant could also cover fines for PDC violations and public disclosure fines.
We have legal counsel here, I don't know.
I was just curious.
The answer would be no, that this grant is specifically for public defenders coming through our Shelton Municipal Court.
Oh, okay.
And the good news is this is, there's actually an additional $10,000 this year over last year.
That's true. Yes, they did increase that, so yeah, we're thankful for the grant.
Any other questions or comments for Vicki Look? Okay, I believe I would entertain a motion at this time.
I move to accept the one, I know it's hard to do, but I'm going to accept it anyway. $100,000 awarded by the Washington State Office of Public Defense for a grant period beginning January 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2019, and be paid at $50,000 in 2018 and $50,000 in 2019, and authorize the mayor to sign grant agreement, public defense grant funding on behalf of the city.
I second that motion.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion passes. All right, number 4. Looks like Logan Brady is going to come up and talk to us about some consulting on C Street.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Last week, I gave an update on the C Street landfill and brought forward contract change number 3 with Aspect Consulting, the firm hired to perform the remedial investigation of C Street. We reached the point in the remedial investigation that the following tasks would take us beyond our budget with Aspect Consulting. We went to the Department of Ecology to seek additional funding. They, due to the lack of a capital budget being passed, could not give us any more funding to move forward, and they could not guarantee that any money that we spent on our own would be reimbursed. So we negotiated with them and Aspect to reconfigure subtask 7.4 to include the drilling of 4 monitoring wells down to the groundwater to test and analyze if there was any, contamination in the groundwater. That will take up 110,000 roughly of our remaining 117,000. That's what we're bringing forward with contract change number 3.
Okay. Maybe any questions from the public first, and then if there isn't any, then any questions or comments from our commission?
So, yeah, I did have a question about this. I'm glad that this is carrying on and we're moving forward on this whole effort. So, for the money with the monitoring wells, so the wells are going to be looked at. That part of the study will be done with this amount of money. So, will we get a report with that as well? Does that amount include a report so we will know going forward whatever else we have to do?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so it's just another step.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a necessary step, and it's a big portion of the remaining subtasks that we kind of eliminated some of the smaller things that still will need to be done, but we pulled in some of the bigger steps so we can continue moving forward. This will take a good chunk of time too, so hopefully by the time that this is done, we will have a capital budget, and the DOE has assured us they have money set aside for continued RI work.
Do we have any kind of estimate as to the time frame?
Not specifically. I would say at least 3 months, probably.
Okay. So kind of through the rainy season?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good to me, Logan. And so, at this point, I would ask for a motion.
I move to approve the C Street landfill contract, change number 3 with Aspect Consulting.
Is there a second?
I second it.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Next is, we're going to talk about an ordinance from our Public Works Director, Craig Gregory, item number 6 on our agenda.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. As we talked about last week, the commission directed us to take a look at how to make their solid waste utility, our customers' solid waste utility bills more transparent, and also lower the possible bill for the customers. So staff went back and took a look at how we could make that happen, and we actually found a way to make all of those things happen by pulling out the solid waste utility tax out of the base rate and making it its own separate line item within the bill. And that in turn lowered the overall bill of a 65 every other week by approximately 19 cents. So I think we accomplished everything that the commission asked us to do with this, and we are bringing forward an ordinance now to make that change and make those bills more transparent.
So I would be happy to answer any questions if you have them at this time.
Well, first we asked our public if they have anything they want to add on that. So if you're signed in, then Jamie, you would tell if there's somebody signed in to speak
Mayor,
about.
can I interrupt for 1 second?
Sure,
We have
absolutely.
the wrong briefing in here.
Huh?
So we have the incorrect briefing in, so I'm wondering if you can table this to the end. Our city attorney's going to go print the correct one.
Okay,
Some of the
so
language is
what we're
missing
going to
from
do
the
at
rest.
this point is table item number 6 on the action agenda, and we're going to continue to move forward, and we will come back to that. Thank you. All right, so item number 7 is a water rate recommendations presented by staff.
Actually,
Transportation.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, my updated version did not have that. Let me go back to my old version just a second. We have a lot on tonight's meeting. Okay, bear with me a second. We have many, many papers, many pieces of information here. Okay.
Do we have an item 6 on your agenda, Mayor?
I do have an item 6. Okay? All right, so we will go to item 6 on this agenda, and that is going to be involving the transportation impact fee. Is that right?
that is correct, Mayor.
All right.
Thank you again. As we discussed last week, the transportation impact fee was voted on part of the rate increases that the commission approved several weeks back to increase. So we have come up with a new project list to increase them back to the original level of 2016 before the reduction. And also the time frame on which those funds can be expended, and increasing it from 6 years to 10 years, and being in line with the Washington State RCW that states that 10-year time period. So again, if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer those.
Anybody from the public would like to weigh in on this specific issue? Seeing none, we have questions or comments from my fellow commissioners?
So how much, can you give me an estimate of how much we have in the fund right now that we,
General estimate right now
Yes.
is there's around $275,000 in the TIP fund. And that's an approximate, I think it's 274 and some change. That's an approximate number.
and are we have projects lined up so that we know how many funds that will be expiring?
We've already approved one project. That was the design work for the downtown connector project. It was $315,000. So at this point, we don't have any that would be expiring. At this point, NOLA is doing an amendment to the 2016 budget that will effectively make that transfer of those funds moving forward, that none of them will expire.
Oh, good, that's good to see. It looks like we have a lot of things in the hopper here, so it'll be, I'm sure no problem using those funds so that we don't lose any of them. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's projected that we are going to be utilizing all of those most likely within the next 12 months.
On a kind of related matter, you said we would be hearing about a grant within the next couple of weeks. Does that include the Alder Street grant and the Turner Street grant?
Yeah, as
application?
Ryan mentioned earlier, the TIB process will be finished up, and they will be coming out with their projects list on Friday, November 17th. So we should have word on the 17th on not only the downtown connector project, but also Turner Street.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
As the idea to carry this to the 10-year instead of the 6, that's to kind of line that up with our like a strategic plan or something. It also gives us more time if we want to use some of that money towards getting some grant match money. Is that kind of the concept there?
That's more of the concept than lining up with our strategic plan. It's more of if you would like to stockpile a larger amount to become match money for a very large project, you could certainly do that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for our Public Works Director? Okay. So at this point, I would, we did have any public comment on that one, covered that base. Jamie, you keeping watch on me on that, right? Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and have a motion.
Mayor, we are asking for a second reading also.
Oh.
for that ordinance.
Okay. All right, so let's have a second reading at this time.
Ordinance number 1907-1017, an ordinance of the City of Shelton, Washington relating to the expenditure of traffic impact fees and amending section 17.12.090 of the Shelton Municipal Code.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I move to approve ordinance number 1907-1017, an ordinance of the City of Shelton, Washington, relating to the expenditure of traffic impact fees and amending section 17.12.090 of the Shelton Municipal Code.
A second?
I second it.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. I did find my hidden, I had number 5, only the problem with it was on another page. So now we're going back to item number 5, I believe, with some updated information from our lawyer. Legal counsel.
And Mayor, we apologize. What was in the packet is an old version, incorrect version. So what Ryan just gave you was the correct ordinance amending the solid waste utility tax. We also have copies of those if anybody from the public would like to have one of those.
Okay, so you want to continue on?
So Mayor, as we talked about earlier, just to reiterate what we had before was the commission had asked us to take another look at this, a way to be more transparent and also lower the bill. We have found a way to do that. It does increase the utility tax by pulling it out of the base rate. But we have found a way to make that more transparent and make it on the bill so that you have an actual number that you can see what that utility tax is, and also lower the every other week 65-gallon container, lowered that bill by approximately 19 cents for the customers.
Okay, at this time, is there any input from the public? I think there might be. So,
We have Randy Lewis.
Everybody, Randy Lewis. The city has put out a false narrative, intentional or not, on this garbage issue from day one. Item 1. So how did the rate get from the 31% still in the contract to the 41.9% in the proposed ordinance? Here's how. The 41.9% represents a tax on a tax on a tax. It is utility tax cubed. If the city wants to get rid of the utility tax cube label, it needs to change the contract as well. I'd be happy to share the dirty details with anyone interested in public if you would like. Item 2. Last week, staff stated that the base rate is being reduced. Not true. What the city was falsely calling the base rate was never the true base rate to begin with. Item 3. The city did not lower the bill for the sake of lowering the bill. All the city did was correct the mistake of charging the 3.6% state tax rate against a false base rate that included the hidden 26% utility tax. Yes, another tax on a tax. Item 4, the question becomes, will the newly revealed calculations be reflected honestly in the customer bills? Consider, Washington Administrative Code 480-70-396, Section 3, Part 4 states, bills must also show the percentage rate and dollar amount of any government tax or fee imposed on the company and passed directly to the customers. Hasn't been happening. Item 5, the most honest way to reduce the bill is to reduce the utility tax from 41.9% to the standard 6%. This would be the honest and consistent with the majority commission's philosophy of small government and low taxes. The value of the garbage franchise belongs to the citizens, not to the government of the city of Shelton. Item 6, if you want to maintain an illusion of transparency, do not post garbage utility tax revenue into the general fund black hole. Be honest and transparent and continue to post the garbage utility tax revenue into the solid waste account 403. Disclose where this revenue is being spent from this account, since the city no longer needs that revenue to provide a garbage service. The citizens deserve this information. I know the commissioners to be honorable people. This is your chance to prove it. The continuing false narrative on this issue is imploding. You are better than this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this issue?
Yes, we have Tom Lowe.
Now, Tom, you're not related to the Lowe's, that famous hardware chain, are you?
Absolutely.
Are you?
President and owner himself.
Oh, absolutely.
You should bring
Actually, it was Lumberman's, actually. Anyway, I just isn't calling my 3 minutes, so it doesn't.
Oh, yeah, don't start his 3 minutes yet.
Okay. Again, I'm Tom Lowe. My question, and of course, is why did our city commissioners, and I expect all of you, dump our public garbage service in favor of a private one through Mason County Garbage and Recycling? Craig Gregory, who I've never actually met, our public works director, said the city of Shelton had never seen a better deal, although no bid process was ever done, nor any names of other companies presented. At least nothing I could find in public record. Through the Freedom of Information Act, I found out that the garbage service was a cash cow. It was bringing in lots of money. Okay? The truth was, it wasn't getting saved. Sometimes my wife and I did that. We'd throw money in a pot, and then by the end of the month, it's all gone. It's kind of what was going on here, even though at the end of the year, by the way, $370,000 was still in the pot. That's how much money was there. Indirect cost was going out like crazy. As an administrator in state government, I know how this works. But you know what? I know the city had needs. So I kept digging. Over the past year, our city has been negotiating with Mason County Garbage. Sounds like a small little local firm, right? No. It's a whale. It's owned by Canadian company Waste Connections Incorporated, which has been taking over small little birds like us all over the place. The corporate attorneys found a loophole in our state's law. There is no cap, okay, on our utility tax. Many of our legislators don't even think this is a utility tax. Maybe a B&O tax or an excise tax, but not a utility tax. For years, our city has imposed a 5% utility tax. All of a sudden now, we need 41.9%. You heard me right, 41.9. By the way, I think it set a state record. I looked and looked, didn't find anything that touched it. Why, you asked? To replace the indirect costs? Why? To replace the indirect costs. Somebody had to do it. So, let me get down here. One of the issues here, and I need to bring this out, was a special deal swing here. $1 million, call it what you will, a loan. Wasn't a gift. We have to pay it back. How do we pay it back? Through the utility tax.
Your
Nope.
time is up, sir.
Yeah, you know, I'm sorry about this. I've done a lot of research. You haven't even touched the bottom line on this. The public needs to know about it.
Thank you for your comments, Tony. All right, anybody else?
That is it.
That's it. All right. So, at this point, do we have any more questions for Craig Gregory? Comments?
My only comment is that I don't really understand this whole thing, and I will remind everyone that I voted against this time and again. So I don't, is there any way that you can address some of the statements that were just made?
Address statements about which part?
Well, about the tax. Is it actually, because honestly, I'm not sure I even understand this yet, even though we've gone through this. I know initially we had talked to franchise fee, and then we had a lot of public comment about the differences in the tax. What's a tax? What's a charge? What's hidden? What's not? And I understand that from staff's perspective, this is clearing things up. Do we have
Not
any?
only for staff, but also for the customers, Commissioner.
So, with future billings, we should have more of a clear statement as far as which charges are which.
Right, so last week in the briefing, there was a breakdown of what the current situation is and what the future, what the proposed structure is. That will be what appears in the bill.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none at this point, I would request a motion.
Mayor, we need a second reading also of this ordinance.
Okay? Do we have a second reading at this time?
Ordinance number 1906-1017, an ordinance of the City of Shelton, Washington, relating to the solid waste utility tax rate, amending section 3.51.010 of the Shelton Municipal Code and establishing an effective date.
Okay, is there a motion?
I will make a motion. I move to approve ordinance number 1906-1017, in ordinance of the City of Shelton amending the Shelton Municipal Code on solid waste utility tax.
Okay, is there a second?
I will second.
Okay. There's a second. Any further discussion?
Should I have read the new ordinance that came in?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. The one that you just gave us, right?
Yes.
Okay, so, see, I move to approve ordinance number 1906-1017, an ordinance of the City of Shelton, Washington, relating to the solid waste utility tax rate, amending section 3.51.010 of Shelton Municipal Code and establishing an effective date.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
There's a motion, a second. Any further discussion?
I would just like to make a request at this time. Mr. Lowe, I would really appreciate having your report that you prepared for us. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. All right. Item number 7 is next in front of us, and at this point, it will be going to be a presentation from our staff concerning our water rates. And
Thank you.
so,
Sorry,
is that correct?
that's it.
Which
Thank you,
staff
Mayor.
do we want to talk about this?
We have everybody up here at the table
Okay.
that can discuss it. I'll start off by mentioning that last week we provided a follow-up to the public forum that we had and also the presentation by the FCS group at your meeting 2 weeks ago. So what you have in front of you are the same three options that were presented. You asked us to bring forward a recommendation. We'll have a more pointed recommendation when we get to the sewer discussion. On the water rate option, though, we have a remaining couple questions that I think would help for us to give a specific recommendation. So you have, just to recap, the three options that were presented and discussed last week. One is to essentially do nothing legislatively, which would maintain the current increase of 4% for 2018 and then would require some action in 2019. The issue that you have there is that there's a potential or likelihood that you wouldn't be able to afford to do the capital improvement plans that was adopted about a month ago. Option two is to increase your ability to fund capital improvements by establishing the 10% annual increase for the next 4 years, which was suggested by the FCS group, with a 3% annual increase in the last 2 years of that 6-year period. And then option three is to increase 10% annually for the next 4 years and lower the amount of future debt by establishing 6% increases in the last 2 years. So a couple things that we wanted to establish. One is that the capital improvement plan really needs to have option 2 or 3 in order for us to fund that. And then really the decision, I think, for the three of you, if you're looking at those two, is whether in years 5 and 6, so 2022 and 2023, if you would like to have lower rates with higher debt required or higher rates with less debt that would have to be taken out. And that's really the discussion between options 2 and 3.
Okay, at this time, I think I'll open up if anybody from the public would have any comments about this. It's the water. We're not talking about sewer at this time, just the water. So we have somebody signed up to speak.
Yes, we have Marilyn Vogler.
Good evening, Marilyn Vogler, 420 East Poplar. I would like to encourage you to approve option 1, which is the 4% increase, knowing that we'll have to come back to it. But I'm hoping this will allow you to exercise your option to request a rate structure study. The recent study that was done told us how much overall the revenue had to increase. It didn't say, and you should increase everyone's rate the same, or you should increase some rates this much and others this much. So it was really a study to talk about how to meet a financial goal. But the city has other goals and policies related to water use. One of those is conservation. I've spoken before the commission about how ridiculous it seemed to allow us 900 cubic feet of water a month before you increase the rate. You didn't decrease that in this new proposal, but rather increased the step to 1,000 cubic feet, if I read correctly. Another goal that you have to, and this increase was even after there was a recognition that having set that 900 cubic feet resulted in less water consumption. So if conservation is one of your goals, the rate structure should facilitate that. Another goal is affordable housing. This last mid-October, there were 378 doors in Shelton red tagged for inability or failure to pay water and sewer bills. The peaks come a month and a half after school starts and a month and a half after Christmas, which tells me that even though some people may forget to pay their bill or misplace it, a lot of people are having to make a choice between paying water and sewer bills and taking care of their children. And so if affordability is a goal or a policy, then you need to look at the rate structure. cities all around, and I've looked at our comparison cities, vary in how they calculate this and how they step the expense of water. And I think it would do well for the city to initiate a rate structure study and follow the good examples of cities like Tumwater, for instance, which has a lifeline rate for low-income seniors, as we do, but theirs applies to renters as well as homeowners. So I urge you, option number 1, please.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else signed up for, to speak about this issue?
Yes, we have Jason Coots.
I would just like to publicly point out that in candidates forum, the mayor.
We can't talk, I don't know if we talk about election politics here. Candidates forum, that's about this election. So we're just trying to listen to our legal staff.
5 years ago.
5 years ago? Okay, that's all right, go ahead, 5 years.
The mayor was on record as saying that the water and sewer rates we're cutting into is the profit margin in his rental houses, and because of that, I think there's a conflict of interest, and I would like to see the mayor excuse himself from voting on this issue.
Thank you for your comments. All right, anybody else signed up for this?
We have no one else signed up for this.
Okay. All right, so at this point, any questions or comments from my fellow commissioners?
I was looking at this, and I'm looking between option 2 and option 3, and it looks like they're pretty much exactly the same until we get up to 2023. And then I'm looking at the difference there and at the graph, and even though it's difficult to see, it looks like it's about $2 or $3. Or is it this accurate, the graph, is it accurate with the lines?
The graph is accurate. I think that the change at the end is roughly around $2, the difference between the
$2?
two. Roughly.
Okay, that's what I was looking at. So I am, I don't like the, I don't like number 1 because of the having to go back in 2019 and redo this whole thing again. I do think there is some value in looking at the rates and seeing if there is some way that we can more equalize the rates according to use and the conservation issues too. So if we were to approve option 2 or option 3, does that prohibit the fact or prohibit the chance to go in and look within our rate structure to do maybe some adjusting inside that?
You can do that at any point. We would just suggest that you go through a firm. FCS Group would be the most logical firm to contract with them to take a look at the structure.
Okay. My major concern, besides people being able to pay their water, is that we keep an abundant supply of safe water and that our citizens can use it, and also that we keep an eye to the future so we don't build huge need for debt in the future. So my preference for this would be, probably option 3 at this point, which would give us the ability to plan for future capital improvements with not that great an increase to a normal water bill. But I would also like to request that we do look at some more maybe creative ways of looking at the structure of what our citizenry is, and see if there's something that we can do within that to maybe make it more affordable for especially elderly or single people that don't use a lot of water.
Okay. Commissioner McDowell?
Well, I wrote it down because I can never remember what I'm going to say, so I'll read it. Now for the water rates. I'm looking again for what is best for our ratepayers and also what is best for the city. I am again thinking, do we have enough information for the rate increase? Do we know or think we will have some money in the form of grants to help us with water projects so that the rates do not get increased a lot? No one can determine if we're going to have any money coming in way of grants. This one is a bit easier to look at. I feel since we do not have any definite money coming for future projects at this point, and into 2018, I feel option 1, a 4% increase would be the best option at this point. Then close to the middle or the end of 2018, we can review the rate increase. If we have not future monies coming in, then let's look at it again. If we have future monies coming in, let's look at it again. I want to maintain the approved water rate plan of a 4% increase for 2018 and make future decision in 2018 as what to do. So I am looking at option 1 for the year 2018, look at it through the year. I want to make sure that everyone knows this was my decision and no one helped me make my mind up on this.
Thank you very much, Commissioner McDowell. Well, I'm not going to pick option 2 because that would put us in a real quandary. The water rate is not as major as the sewer rate. The next issue we're going to talk about is the sewer rate. And but on this one, I don't think it's the end of the world because it's like a $2.98 increase. But my whole deal is to try and make affordable housing, affordable living, and a balance between how much the government has to set aside reserves and how much we have to project, into the future on this stuff. I know that last year, and I'm using this as an example, is that we chose not to raise some of these rates, and this year we ended up being able, that we, through our grant money we got, we basically saw a dip in these rates, and we didn't raise anything last year. So I think I would go on the water on option 1 at this point and just do a 4% increase. And actually, if you were to take option 2, and instead of going 10% for a certain period of time and then going to a 3% and then a 0, what it just does is it extends it out a little bit farther. I have always tried to look real close at how much to raise rates or not raise rates, and on this issue, I would probably support the option number 1. But we all have to compromise, and if we run into a deficit later on, then we will again have to look at it and raise it. But I would probably support option number 1 at this time on the water.
One more. Good.
Mayor, I do have to point out that you do have infrastructure needs on your CIP that this commission approved for the next couple of years that will not be funded if we don't increase these rates more than the 4%. So at that point, we are looking at, you're looking at longer range debt, because there aren't a lot of grants out there for water infrastructure. There are quite a few low interest loans, as I think Public Works has presented in the past. So you would be deferring some of these capital improvements that we already approved and that we were looking at. So just so you understand kind of what we're looking at for the finances of the water fund.
I feel comfortable with option 1 at this time. So I guess we can vote on it unless one of us changes our mind.
Well, hold on.
Sure.
Hold on. So what are we looking at as far as money for the infrastructure, for the capital improvement plans that we have? What, you have a number on what the cost is on those?
Of the overall CIP that we approved, I think it was a little better than 14 million.
Okay.
And we would be able to responsibly fund that with it looks like either option 2 or 3.
I think this certainly would give you the ability to get some of the match money that you would need for grants or loans to apply for those. which you are certainly going to need. You're not going to get likely any of these fully funded, so you're going to need something that will supplement those loans or grants in the form of match money that right now we do not have in the fund.
So,
I'm sorry, Tracy.
so if we do not fund this responsibly, we are immediately looking at a deficit as we start making these improvements that we've already committed to.
You're either looking at a deficit or you're looking at not doing these
them.
infrastructure projects. I think that's more important, that to have safe water, I think that's what you're looking at.
So are those projects scheduled for 2018, to be completed in 2018?
They would be started.
And is there, if there was an emergency needed for those, is there not a way to adjust this after tonight's vote? I mean, is there not, if we were faced with some emergency or something, is there not a way that we could then transfer money from some other, anything else? Or we just choose not to do that project, is that?
We would likely need to come back starting next week and discuss the capital improvement plan that we presented about a month or two ago. And I think the discussion would be around what we don't do next year that was approved in that capital improvement plan.
So option one, there wouldn't be the money available. We would just be going along, paying our water, paying our and there wouldn't be any money available for the capital improvement plans.
That's correct.
Which are highly needed, right?
We have defined some projects that we feel are certainly needed to either improve or protect our water system, and those are needed in a fairly short time frame in our best estimate.
But you said they won't be completed in 2018. You said we start those projects in 2018.
You certainly need to start designing those and also have upfront money to either provide match money for grants or loans. So you
Right,
need
so,
that.
so the 4% increase, so we're still voting for a 4% increase.
You have the 4% increase coming if you do nothing. That's
Yeah.
going to happen.
Right.
That was on the
So
water.
there's 4%. So are you saying that that is not enough money to start designing those projects? Because if you don't complete them in 2018, we have a 2019 budget.
If we looked at what FCS Group presented to us, that increase is covering some general increases in operations in O&M. Those are not going to infrastructure projects. It is basic inflation for that fund.
So basically the cost of operation currently as it is.
Correct. I think FCS Group had it a little better than 3%.
Mhm.
Well,
So it looks like we have an option 1 and an option 3 that we're waiting for Kathy McDowell to come in
Always
and
waiting
make
for me.
that decision.
well, it kind of scares me to think that with now looking back on option one, that this just there wouldn't be the money there to do those very important water improvements. We would just be going along. Even if we went back came back in 6 months in the middle of 2018 and re-looked at them and hoping that there would be some money come in somewhere, is that a dream?
What kind of money are you
Well,
asking
grants,
about?
any grants or, not very often.
It's not likely at this point. We certainly, and even to move forward with an ask for a grant or a loan, we would certainly have to start design soon and have the funding to actually get those designs done so that we had a complete project that we could ask for funding.
And the funding's not there to start plans with just on the 4%.
I don't think we've found that within
Okay.
a lot of funds.
It'll take the 4% just for basic O&M.
Okay.
Just to keep the normal services running without.
One last
without
question.
putting anything in the capital improvement.
One last question. So the projects that you're planning to start in 2018, that you want to start designing, will they be completed in 2019? Or are they going to be completed in 2020, 2021?
At this point, Mayor, I can't answer
Okay.
when they would be completed. until you get an actual design. We get an estimate of number of working days at that point, and we would have a better idea. But I can't tell you what, like some of these projects that we've got coming up, of what the number of working days would be to complete those.
And I can speak a little bit to the project. So next year you have a main replacement that was approved at $150,000. 2019, which part of doing projects in 2019 is starting to establish that reserve fund that FCS talked about. You have 3 projects there totaling, it looks like $2.5 million in 2019. So part of their plan that they presented to you a couple weeks ago was to start building a reserve fund that you could set aside. And as Craig mentioned earlier, the only way to do these without the appropriate funding, you're gonna have to borrow money likely anyway if you can't find grant or capital budget money, would be to find more money that is gonna be borrowed. So just to point out what was approved before, in the next 2 years, you've got $150,000 next year, then 2.5 in 2019.
And that 2.5 would need to be planned for now and start design in 2018.
So if we went with option 2, can we come back later and change that if needed? I mean, if we went with option 3, the 6% annual increase on 2022 to 2023, either one of those, can we come back and readjust?
Yeah.
So if I went with option 2, we could still adjust it to option 3 if needed, or went from option 3 to option 2?
Or something else if the situation changed.
If the situation changed. Okay.
I understand the concept of budgeting for future improvements, but I also know that the people that I represent, their money is not growing at the rate that government grows. This is probably a small issue, the $2.98 or whatever. And I would be happy to compromise and come into the option 2, but I would certainly hope that everything I'm being told tonight is real and truthful. And I don't say that it's not. I'm just saying we're all guessing about the future. We guessed about the future, and we want, because nothing is, rock solid. There are other things that come into play and have come into play, especially involving sewers and grant money with sewers. So I take this job very seriously, and I know that the people that I represent, and I will continue to represent for as long as I'm here, want me to do everything within my possible realm to not use their money and continue to, because our rates are very high to begin with. So at this point, I would entertain supporting
That's
option.
one more question.
No, I'm not going to motion. I'm just saying I would entertain.
Okay, and then I have a
I'm not going to
question.
entertain a
Okay,
motion.
okay.
I'm going to entertain voting on option 2, but that would require the possibility of you compromising, maybe, and Commissioner Moore compromising, maybe, if she wants to hold out for option 3. But in this case, I'm open to go into the option 2 realm, trusting that we have to have this money to design the projects in 2018, that money has to be for that.
Is there a specific concern about truthful statements? Because we're not telling you what to do. But again, we're just pointing out that
you
if...
kind of are, but that's okay. I mean, I'm just saying...
No, we're not.
Well, you're
We're just pointing out
recommending...
that if you choose to do option 1, we'll need to relook at this capital improvement plan because it was approved about a month ago. The FCS group came and did work based on the capital improvement plan. So we just want to make it very clear so that we're not coming back next week and pointing out that we now have to go back and take out these projects, that you have all the information that you need.
I have a question about option 2. It says 2018 to 2021, there'll be a 10% annual increase. 22 to 23, is it a 3% added onto that, or is that backed off to a 3%?
Be backed, it's a 3% increase in 2022, and then another 3% in 2023.
Of what it would be at the end, by the end of 2021, that 3%?
Correct.
Okay, all right.
Added onto that.
All right, okay, so, well, I'm always one that likes to study things and find out different ways to do stuff. And I like option 2 because we can come back in a few months, or, middle of 2018, said option 2 isn't really working, we're going to need to for our capital improvement projects. We're going to need to bump it up some, raise the rates a little bit more. I hate to see that, but I would like to start with option 2 at a 3% on there.
It appears we're finding some point of common ground. So Commissioner Moore,
Yes.
do you think option 2 would be possible?
I have some concerns about option 2 that I would just like to bring up. I think one thing that I can appreciate is that nobody wants to raise the rates. I think that it's a waste of our public's money if we constantly bring things back and spend, I don't know how much staff time is spent every time we do one of these things. So, you know, we have a pretty clear, step forward here. And I think, honestly, there is value for our citizens in having expectations and having a certainty about what is going to happen with their rates. And I think there could be a value in that rather than saying, well, we're going to do this, we're going to do basically the same thing, and then we're going to go through all of this again in a couple of years, or we're going to look at it again next year. I think that is a waste of money, and I think it doesn't really give us a solid, it doesn't feel solid to me. It feels kind of wishy-washy. So I would prefer option 3, not because it's the most expensive, but I think that it would meet our needs, although we would still need to once again bring all of this up again in a few years to look at how we're going to fund the capital improvements in the future. So I think predictability is really important to me, but I also, like I said earlier, am committed to making sure that our water supply is safe and abundant with doing these capital improvement plans.
It appears staff is okay with option 2. Option 2 will get us through the year, won't it? I mean, you said 2 or 3 on your recommendation.
We're okay with any option. We just want to point out that the big difference between options 1 versus 2 and 3 is that 1 doesn't fund the capital improvement plan. So 2 and 3 are very similar, like I mentioned at the beginning. The only difference between those 2 is at the end of the years 5 and 6, whether you want to have lower rates with more debt or more debt, less debt and higher rates. But the big difference for us is between 1 versus 2 and 3.
Sure. So I don't think you would be coming back in 6 months from now and saying, we're short on option 2 money. We got to go to, you guys got to revote and go to option 3. That's the question that I think Commissioner McDowell was getting at.
There's no difference between options 2 and 3 for 4 years.
So at this point, we all compromise in everything we do. I would entertain a motion for myself. I would support option 2 at this time. So if we had a motion and we had other people that wanted to do that, this would be the...
I move that the commission select option 2. This is kind of a funny thing. Okay, I move that we go ahead with option 2 as presented by staff for our water rates.
Okay.
I second that.
There's a motion and a second to approve option 2. Any further discussion? All those in favor for the water rates signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. And next is the sewer, and the sewer is much more expensive. So I believe we can have a discussion. Let's see here. Let me find my sheet.
I can start if you.
You got covered up. Are you ready to start on option? Yeah, for the sewer rates. Okay, let's hear a staff.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. So again, this is what we presented last week. In discussions last week, we had 5 options. We've introduced a 6th option that we'll discuss in a minute, but just wanted to go through the options that you have in front of you. 1, you already have a 5% increase scheduled from 2018 through 2020, and then further decisions required for the last half of the 6-year period. Option 2 was to freeze the sewer rate. The issue there is that it would not allow for completing the capital improvement plan for sewer that you've already approved. Option 3 was to decrease the rate 11% next year and then increase 8% the following year, in addition to a 4.5% increase in 2020. Option 4 is to decrease the rate 3.5% in 2018, followed by a 7.5% increase in years 2019 and 2020. You asked us to remove option 5, which was a decrease of 20%. The option that we are suggesting that you move forward with would allow you to freeze rates in 2018 and then provide the gradual increases of 4% per year, the balance of that 6-year period, which is last 5 years. And just to reiterate, no action would maintain the 5% per year for the next 3 years that has already been approved.
Okay. I think I'd like to speak to this first because the city staff and myself and fellow commissioners have fought very, very hard at getting substantial grant money back into the sewers. And so we are looking at a strong possibility of getting Basin 3 paid for by 100% grant money. And the only reason that I fought this hard was to attempt to lower the sewer rates for the ratepayers. Okay. This was given to us at our last meeting here, and it shows a big dip in 2018. That big dip represents the hard work that the city staff, myself, fellow commissioners, our state legislators, Department of Ecology, and the governor himself have fought for the city of Shelton to accomplish a lot of grant money for Basin 3. Okay, that's the dip right there. So I did it so that we could say to the citizens, we always raise, we never lower. When we have emergencies, we always raise the rates. But when we have a little bit of breathing room, what we do is say, well, we got a little breathing room, but we're going to take that extra money and we want to apply it to reserves for the future and whatnot. And that's all real nice, but it doesn't help the people in the city when they're trying to pay their sewer bills. So what I would like to do is look hard at literally giving the people's money back to them, which is the 11% decrease. So that's where I would like to start on this conversation. According to this graph, we can for 1 year do that, and I don't see any, according to this now, unless this is fictitious, but this is the study that we paid for that shows the big dip. See?
Mayor, just a little bit of clarity on that dip. That dip, FCS Group did explain what that dip was, and that is the Basin 3 project. But we do have to be cautious of having that fully funded, which is not a guarantee at this point. It is not a guarantee that we receive all of the grant money that we originally thought we had. There is no guarantee that that project is going to come in at the level that we thought maybe it was going to. The current bid market is not very favorable. We're trying to help that out with coupling that with another project. We also have some issues with that as far as that is the indirect cost that was going to that project that originally was going to be paid for by grant money and supplement that. But I think at this point it is cautiously optimistic for us to think that that is going to be fully funded. I don't think it is going to be 100% funded, which means that that dip would need to be funded through the loan portion of that project. So you're looking at that dip as either you could do it now, but you're going to pay for it in overall long-term debt. So I just want to be clear on what that reduction would look like in the long term if it ended up costing more with that low-interest loan that we would have to supplement that project with. So just a little bit of clarity.
All right. Now, this is an action item. If there's any public input that wants to talk about our sewer rates, now would be the opportunity. But you'd have to sign up. So, state your name. Thank you.
I sat through all your rate studies that you paid for. and I've listened to the staff, and, you know, I know it's not easy to decision to make. I was there once doing that. But what I want to say is, you know, you have a staff here that are professionals. You hired a professional agency to study this for you and gave you the recommendations. And for you to sit there and use words fictitious or trustful is really demeaning to your staff. These guys work really hard. They're in the business to do this. It's a professional occupation for all of them. And I really commend Commissioner McDowell for listening to staff and changing your mind to the benefit of the city. It's never easy to do this type of stuff. But I think that you need to worry about morale of the staff when you start, you know, veiled threats or veiled, you know, communication that they're not doing their job correctly. That these guys are professionals and you need to trust them if you're going to pay them. Thanks.
Thank you for your comment. Anybody else want to speak about the city's sewer rate? Okay, so now we're into the commissioner conversation here.
Commissioner McDowell, would you like to go first?
I would like to go first. Thank you. I looked over everything, looked through the sewer rate options again, and looked over all the numbers. And I am very, very comfortable with what staff recommends for option 6. And I'll explain why. We were told that at this rate study that if we didn't do anything with the sewer rates, keep them frozen, keep them level, we could go on quite a few years just keeping them the same and being able to add some money to the reserves. Is that true, Nola?
It's true.
Okay, so that, I got excited about that.
For a period of time.
For a period of time, right. So I like option 6 to freeze the sewer rates again for another year and save for future needs in subsequent years. 2018, no change. 2019 to 2023, a 4% increase. And I think that would be I think that would be a good move for the city on our sewer rates.
All right.
That's me.
I agree with Commissioner McDowell.
All right. Well, that's all it takes is 2 out of 3. So, at this point, any other questions or comments for staff? Any other comments from the public? And forgive me, staff, if any of my comments were, I didn't really want to get too offensive to y'all, but we're all doing our jobs. And I just want to say that projections and studies and rates are not guaranteed where we're going to be. This is our best projections. These aren't, all these things are not guarantees. If it was a guarantee, we would not have had, on past studies, we would not have had a dip in 2018. So these are our best ideas. These are not guaranteed. Even the rate study is not a guaranteed, it's their best projection. So
I do have another question for
Sure.
staff. So there, you know, the dip is speculation at this point, because we don't know how soon and if we will get the full appropriation from the capital budget. And we don't know what the costs are rising. Is it 4% for the construction costs? It's something like that.
I think she'd estimated 3%, remember?
3%?
Somewhere around there.
Okay, so we do have to be aware of that. Is the option 6 that will keep us going on Basin 3? What happens if we don't get the appropriation? We will be able to fund that. Is that correct? Don't you?
It is tough to forecast where
Okay.
the bid market is going to be at when we actually get to bid in late winter, early spring.
Mhm.
But you do have a funding source through a low interest loan at this
that's
point
correct.
that also could supplement some of that. If the grant funding falls short, you do have, I want to say, 2.9 million in loan funding available to supplement anything that would fall short of the grant.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
So we can continually freeze those sewer rates for another year. We can dig for more money for other projects, hopefully.
We're always digging for more funding, that's,
Yeah.
yeah.
That is one thing that staff has done. We are constantly looking for grants and ways to take the burden off of our ratepayers.
Yes, thank you for that very much.
All right, so I request a motion at this time.
Okay, I move to select option 6, which will freeze sewer rates in 2018 and then institute a 4% annual increase from 2019 until 2023, and direct staff to prepare the required ordinance changes to be presented at the November 13th, 2017 meeting.
I second that.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Aye. The motion passes. Next is administration reports from our city administrator.
Just a couple of things, Mayor and Commissioners. We're going to bring back that fee schedule next week, so you'll have that comprehensive fee schedule update to take a look at. And then we've had a pretty good run with public forums last month or so. We did Shelton Out Loud. We also had a public forum on water and sewer rates, and also a public forum on Downtown Connector Project. So we're planning another one for December. We'll take a look at getting people in to talk about some of the issues that they have had with code enforcement and some other things, and talking about neighborhood watches and business watch groups. So we'll have more details to come, but just so you know, we're working on that for December.
All right, thank you very much. Our next meeting will be November 13th at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. This meeting is adjourned.